Hello, my friends. I'm in the midst of Hurricane Helene, so I am here in my father, Tom Colton's office. Thank him for getting this video going, and let's jump into it. This is something you don't want to miss. With a career spanning over 4 decades, there's no question that Denzel Washington is a legendary actor. Beyond his incredible talent, he's always stood out for his refusal to be framed as a victim, and in the series of interviews that I'll show you today, the man managed to put back a lot of woke reporters in their place. But before I dive deeper into it, make sure to subscribe for more discussions like this.
So why did he need a black director? Could a white director not have?
It's not color, it's culture.
Explain the difference, because I think we're
Steven Spielberg did Schindler's List. Mm-hmm. Martin Scorsese did Goodfellas, right? Steven Spielberg could direct Goodfellas. Martin Scorsese probably could have done a good job with Schindler's List, but they're cultural differences. You know, I know, you know, we all know what it is when a hot comb hits your hair on a Sunday morning, what it smells like. Huh? That's a cultural difference, not just a color difference. So it's a culture.
You know about a hot comb scenario?
She don't know about it.
Because that's
you don't know nothing about. See how everybody laugh? That's a cultural difference. Yeah. That's not a race difference. That's just that motion. That's all I gotta say, right?
I know what a hot comb is.
Okay. All right.
And that's the major issue here. Hollywood and everyone who works in that ecosystem love to reduce complex cultural stories to a simplistic narrative centered on race. Instead of recognizing the nuance and depth of the story being told, the focus becomes skewered towards the racial identity of the creators and the cast. This approach misses the point entirely because it is not just about the color of the director's skin. It's about the cultural understanding and living experiences that a director brings to the table, which are often crucial to telling an authentic story. A great example of culture over race in filmmaking is how Francis Ford Coppola made The Godfather as an Italian-American. Coppola was able to capture the essence of the Italian-American mafia with authentic cultural nuance, family loyalty, honor, and the immigrant experience. It wasn't just about representation, it was about telling a story that deeply resonated with universal themes like power and betrayal. Had someone outside this cultural context directed it, the film would have definitely lost the depth. That's why reducing these films to just stories based on race creates a narrow, one-dimensional view of what they represent, culture, and lived experience that are much richer concepts than race alone. What Hollywood needs to understand is that it's not about race for the sake of race, but about telling stories that are true to their cultural roots, which only happen with those that have experience and knowledge they can convey authentically.
I want to just ask you, though, about the issue of race relations, because the film touches upon that. Right now, under President Obama, over the last 8 years, in your mind, have race relations improved under his leadership?
You know, race relationships have to do with race relationships. You're white or whatever you are. I'm black or whatever I am. We're standing here talking now. That's how we get things done. You can't legislate love. The president of the United States can't legislate us into liking each other. We have to step forward and ask questions about each other and engage. There's no law that says, oh, because I'm president, you all got to get along now. So it's up to us.
I love how Denzel didn't take the bait on that question, because that's what the reporter was trying to do. Race relations is another complex issue that goes far beyond simply electing a black president or putting a person of color in a position of power. There's no question it's a symbolic move, but that's where the story stops, and I fully endorse Denzel's statement and would like to add on to it. You can't legislate or enforce love, tolerance, or equality from the top down. True change comes from the bottom up and driven by everyday people who actively work to reduce the hateful rhetoric and harmful stereotypes that fuel this racism. I think the real battle against racism happens in neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, and social circles where people challenge their own biases, call out injustice, and engage in uncomfortable conversation. Now, don't get me wrong, electing someone like Barack Obama as president was a major step forward, but it didn't magically eliminate racism. In fact, in many cases, it brought racial tension to the surface. Political representation can set an example and push policies forward, but it's the cultural shift on a personal and communal level where we begin to solve the issue. When hate is toned down and people can see that one another are individuals rather than stereotypes, the wall that divides begins to crumble down.
We know for a fact that so many talented African Americans who don't achieve their goals, or they're prevented or deprived from achieving their big dreams because of their skin color. I'll give you an example. Globetrotters, they were much better basket players than the white guys, but they were not allowed to play in the big league. Mm-hmm. Don't you think it is the problem is the racial discrimination?
The right word is not is, was.
Was.
And that's not the only problem. That's one of the problems. Now, you can make it the only one if you'd like, but it's not the only one. But that's a fact. That's a fact. They couldn't play basketball in the NBA. Well, their grandfathers couldn't walk on the sidewalk, or they were slaves. So each generation is trying to do better for the next generation.
And that's what it boils down to. Woke people and Hollywood have increasingly encouraged society to focus on the grievances and injustices of the past rather than acknowledging the progress they've made. While it's important to remember and acknowledge history and the struggles that are marginalized groups that have faced, the fixation on a past wrongdoings overshadows the significant improvements that have been achieved. Instead of celebrating these advancements, Hollywood constantly reminds people of historical injustice and keeping people trapped in a victimhood mindset. This makes it harder to move forward. It's as if progress isn't enough to talk about unless it's framed in the context of ongoing struggle. This narrative creates a divisive environment where guilt and shame are at the forefront of every discussion, and at the expense of unity and collaboration. Acknowledging the present realities and the progress made offers a more hopeful and motivational perspective on racial issues. Society needs to focus on building a more inclusive future without being weighed down by an endless rehash of historical wrongs, where different identity groups compete to score the highest points on the victimhood chart. There's one last thing I want to show you where Denzel outlines how real change is made. Watch what he says next.
It was something I read where you talked about your people from Mount Vernon saying that, you know, like they've done like 40 years in the penitentiary together.
Mm-hmm.
So, and, you know, incarceration rates in America has been a problem, especially as opposed to minorities. And Roman delves into the issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway in the
I
legal?
think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, yeah, they're little yummies. I said, who? He said, little yummies. Look up, Google Little Yummy. Little Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father?
Yeah.
It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And yeah, well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father?
Yeah.
That's right. A lot of people seem to forget the importance of personal responsibility and family in creating a stable and thriving society. You might be asking why that isn't the case. Perhaps the topics get overlooked because they don't fit the broader agendas pushed by media, politics, or pop culture, or because holding people accountable for their own actions and decisions don't offer the same clickbait potential or political mileage. At the end of the day, individuals have control over their choices and actions. However, in a culture increasingly obsessed with victimhood and assigning blame, this concept takes a backseat. Instead, the narrative tends to focus on external forces as the primary reason for personal struggle. Truth is, while systematic issues do exist, they're not the sole reason for individual outcomes. Strong family structures also give people a foundation to succeed, offering guidance, love, and security. That's why we've seen countless philosophers and politicians say family is the cornerstone of society, yet discussions about the breakdown of the family unit rarely make headlines or even major Hollywood productions. What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with Denzel's point? Let's get the conversation rolling in the comments down below.